Alrighty, it's hit 7 o'clock, so let's kick this off, shall we? Welcome everyone to our first ever live streaming Canberra AWS user group. As always, my name is Brian Farnhill, and welcome to my house, essentially. Super glad that we've had some people turn up for this. It's going to be an interesting little experiment to see how we go with user groups in the current climate and how we can keep our little community going here around what we're doing with AWS. So we've got got a good lineup of content for you tonight. Hugh, our main presenter, is standing by and he's ready to go as well. So let's just jump into it here, shall we? So we'll do a usual run through of what's new in AWS this month, talking through some of my top 10 releases in the last few weeks. We'll cover off some of the white papers that have been updated as well for anyone who's interested in some of those, and then we'll get into the main presentation. Hugh Evans from the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, talking about provisioning serverless with the CDK. Now, for those of you who have been to the user group a few times before, you'll notice that there's a couple of slides missing from that agenda, things like upcoming training courses and upcoming events. So training courses we've left out at the moment, there's a lot of them that are transitioning to virtual classroom formats, and that's causing some changes in dates and formats. So hopefully when we come back to this next month, we'll have more information that we can share with you around training courses that are available, particularly those that can be done online. As for events, the main one that I wanted to bring everyone's attention to was our Sydney Summit. So that was due to be happening next week, but unfortunately, in light of the current state of things, we had to cancel that as a physical event. What we are doing, though, is we're looking at what we can implement in terms of online content to get you all of the same information and content we would have presented at Sydney Summit, but in a format that is available online for people to consume. So, again, as we get more information on that, we'll absolutely make sure that we get the word to you. So, AWS this month, we have had 116 new features and releases so far. There's still a couple of days left in the month. And our usual party trick of what does that look like on a graph. So let me flick over to that view so that's a little bit easier to see. So there's this month's data. And so, we're ticking along, plenty of new stuff still coming out into the platform, which is always great. Here's a rundown of some of the ones that I found interesting. So the first one, Amazon Athena, which is a service for being able to query unstructured data from an S3 bucket, has added support for a new feature in IAM, the called via condition key. So what this is it gives you the mechanism to say, give a user permission to query data in S3, which is a requirement for Athena. But in this particular case, you can specify that they have to call it from Athena. So they don't get direct access to the bucket, but they still get the required permission to be able to execute the query from Athena. So this is a really great way to implement security of your data sets while still allowing the flexibility of using Athena to query. The second one is AWS Code Commit has introduced a new credential helper. So the Git Remote Code Commit helper. So this is open source, it's available on GitHub. And essentially, once you install it on a system, you can use it to simplify the process of connecting to those code commit repositories for your Git repositories. And it also simplifies the credential management. So if you've ever played around with the Git credential helper and found that moderately frustrating, as some people tend to do, this is absolutely one that you should check out. Next, in following the fashion of There's No Place Like AP Southeast 2, AWS Control Tower is now available in Sydney. So Control Tower, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a service that lets you provision a sort of well-governed multi-account structure in AWS. It follows a set of best practices that we've built into the service. So it's got a lot of guardrails in there and makes it very easy to implement multi-account setups where you've got guidance and guardrails and the ability to audit what's going on across that environment. And so now you can do that based out of the Sydney region. Next on the list was AWS WAF added a new managed rule set. So just to cover those off again, we a couple of months ago we talked about the new AWS managed rules, which is where you turn on your WAF, your web application firewall, and you can add rules that we manage for you. And in this case, we've added a new one around anonymous IP addresses. So what this does is it automatically blocks known IP addresses for anyone who's trying to use like IP anonymizers or anything like that to hide their identity. It can automatically block those at the firewall to keep those people away from your applications. Next up is my favorite new service name of the month by a long way, Bottle Rocket. So Bottle Rocket is actually a new Linux-based operating system that we've built. It's open source and it's designed specifically to run containers. So what we've done with Bottle Rocket is we've created a Linux distribution that has good secure defaults. It is very slimmed down to contain only the packages that are related to running containers. And essentially it's based off of the years of experience that we've gained running our own container-based workloads and building an operating system to suit that. So if you're looking at container-based workloads, go and have a look at Bottle Rocket and see what it can do in terms of improving the operation and security posture of your underlying infrastructure there. Number 6 on my list for this month is we have a new specialist certification. So for those of you who have looked into it, we have a number of AWS exams you can go and take to become AWS certified. And now we've added a new specialist database certification. So this one's targeted very strongly at DBAs. So it talks to things like how you select the right types of databases in AWS, how to operate, monitor, how to migrate, how to performance manage, all those sorts of DBA good things. So if you're a database administrator, definitely go and have a look at that new certification if you're looking to get a neat little certificate to show that you know what you're on about. Next, we've got an update to Elasticache for Redis. So Elasticache, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the service, is our managed in-memory cache service. So it comes in 2 flavors, Redis and Memcached. And this particular update applies to Redis. It's a global data store. So this is for scenarios where you want to run an application in multiple AWS regions. So if I'm trying to make sure I've got something that is able to serve a worldwide audience and to be able to fail over between regions. What this does is it lets you create a single Elasticache cluster and it can replicate into secondary AWS regions, usually with less than a second worth of latency on those replications. So that makes it really, really easy to have a consistent data store spaced out across multiple AWS regions with just a few mouse clicks. Next on the list, more services that have come into Sydney this month. This one is Amazon Forecast. So Forecast is a service where essentially you say, I've got a bunch of data and I'd like to be able to use it to generate some machine learning based forecasts on. Now, you don't need to train your own machine learning models or anything like that. You simply point Forecast at the data and we go and do the heavy lifting for you. So then you've got intelligent machine learning driven forecasts of that information that you can integrate into your own applications. And my last 2 for the month, we have a new service in preview that is now available in 18 of our AWS regions, which is most of them. So it's in Sydney as well. It's the Managed Cassandra service. So this is another one that we've done where we've tried to innovate on behalf of our customers, where they've come to us and said, look, we've got applications that are bound to Cassandra for an application, and we would really love to be able to bring that into AWS. So we've taken the approach of running it in a managed form, so very similar to our relational database service where we do the underlying operating system patching and management for you, and you just get a Cassandra platform that you can incorporate into your applications. So if you've got apps that are dependent on Cassandra that you had put off looking at moving into the cloud, absolutely go and have a look at that preview and see what it can do for you. And the last one is being able to execute chef recipes on Linux with AWS Systems Manager. So anyone who's not heard of Chef, it's a configuration management platform that you can use to configure your operating systems. And now we've got the ability to use AWS Systems Manager to automatically execute those Chef runbooks across 1 or 100 or 1,000 of your instances all at once, so that you can do it in a managed way, you can track what executed and what didn't, and not have to interact with every individual machine. This will also do things like installing the appropriate components in the operating system to execute Chef in the first place. So again, it makes it really, really easy if you've got Chef recipes that manage your infrastructure to bring those into AWS. All right, so white papers that have been updated this month. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's a couple that I think stand out in terms of customers in Canberra that we talked to. The second one on the list around data classification is an interesting read in terms of mechanisms and tools you can use in AWS to help classify data that you've got stored. And the second last one on the list as well, the AWS overview of security processes. This is an overview of what do we do to keep AWS secure. So it talks to things like physical security of our data centers. It talks to network infrastructure and how we do security in there. It refers heavily to our compliance programs and points you in the right direction for those. But if you're in the security space, it's absolutely one you're going to want to have a read through to be aware of the things that we do to secure the cloud. All right, so before I hand over to Hugh, the usual couple of things. What do you want to hear? So again, we love hearing from you guys in terms of what content are you interested in? Do you have something you'd like to present yourself? It can be just 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be a war and peace of some really complicated thing. We're just really interested in hearing what people out there are doing. So if you've got an idea of something you want to hear about or you want to speak, feel free to reach out to me through Meetup or drop something in the chat window here on Twitch, because that's a thing we have now. Submit your feedback each month. So we're still using Meetup to coordinate these, and Meetup still will ask you for feedback in the same ways, and I will still go through and read all of the feedback as I do every month. Again, it really helps me pick the right content based on what people think, and again, we really value that feedback. So when you get the notification from Meetup tomorrow, please make sure you go through and do that. Really appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, as always, friends don't let friends miss the AWS user group, even when it's online. You'll be able to send a link to this recording around as well. Twitch will keep it for 60 days, I believe. So I'll make sure I put a link in Meetup as well. So if you wanted to use the recorded video of tonight's session to introduce other people to the AWS user group, please go ahead and do that, because again, the more the merrier. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to Hugh. And we'll see if we can't get this this thing working. So, all right, Hugh, are you there? You're on mute, buddy. That's right. It happens in Twitch too. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry about
that. No, you're good. I'll hand over to you. It's all yours.
Yeah, I'm going to have a bit of fun tonight. I'm going to provision something with AWS CDK. CDK is AWS's cloud development kit library, which I'm going to introduce to you briefly, because we're going to spend most of the talk actually building stuff. We're going to step through, actually build a couple of stacks from scratch and deploy them all out. And I'll share a link, and we'll be able to interact with the stack together. And I have made this quite interactive, and we can have a bit of fun. Okay, quickly, why CDKs? So when you hear infrastructure as code, traditionally that's actually meant infrastructure as config files, and config files are not a lot of fun. You can get linters and that type of thing, which can help with the process, but at the end of the day, they're just YAML or JSON files, and the tooling is just not as good. And that's partly because CDK is real code. It's a bunch of different languages, which I'll cover in a second, but they're all statically typed. Actually, I don't know if the Python one is, but I guess it must be to some degree. So yeah, you basically, by the time you go to deploy or deploy out your stack, you've covered off many errors that you would have not found until you stepped up. So very rarely nowadays do I have errors in the actual deployment process. I actually solve those before I've even pressed save in the IDE, which I can show you in a minute. And of course, it's built on top of CloudFormation. It is it's just bolstering CloudFormation, and it's allowing it to do some things with graph management that it just can't do otherwise. Often you'll have kind of chicken and egg scenarios with CloudFormation. Often it's around certificates and S3 buckets, and you ending up having to make multiple stacks, whereas CDK it's got a lot of logic under the hood, which will allow you to smooth over all those and just deploy it out all one atomic process. If it needs to, it will deploy Lambda functions and execute subsequent operations from there to get the stack out. But often that's transparent to you, and you're just dealing with like the declarative definition of your infrastructure in the code. And finally, I believe this using CDK or tools like this, infrastructure as actual code, allows much better reuse and patterns. And you can see that already. CDK has the core libs, and it has a whole bunch of pattern type libs that do really cool things. I'm going to use a couple of them in a moment. And on top of that, there's a whole bunch of community patterns out there, cdkpatterns.net or .com, I can't remember. There's a whole bunch there already, some fascinating ones. I'll put all these links at the end. So yeah, it's just really, it's really thriving in the open source world, and it's developing quickly. So it's available in these runtimes, which I think is incredible, actually. I've only ever used the TypeScript one, but obviously JavaScript falls out of the TypeScript one, but just the fact that they keep it up to date in all these languages is incredible, I think. And it's moving very fast. I just had a release yesterday, so I updated my talk for that, but it's probably on average a release every 1 to 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is TypeScript. Here I'm creating a bucket. I'm applying an IAM policy, and then I am creating a Lambda function and giving that Lambda function access to that bucket. We will step through doing these kind of things in the talk, but just want to give you an early heads up of what it's going to look like. You can notice straight away on this one that the Lambda function is just referring straight to a TypeScript file. So, typically if you worked with Lambda, you'd be used to making zip files and zipping things up. So this is just one of the cool things that CDK gives you, the ability to simply reference a file, basically, that will get bundled and zipped automatically for you in the deployment process. You don't even have to think about it. Okay, so demo. But what do we want to achieve? So what we're going to solve today is a really common use case in web applications, and that's handling uploads. And handling, in this case, handling many, many uploads and many large uploads. So we all know that posting large binary files through your web servers can bring them to their knees, and the correct way to do it is to post them directly to S3. Often you'll give the client a pre-signed URL and they can post up their files with that, but this is all about processing those files once they've completed their upload. So you could imagine the client has done a multi-part upload, and that as soon as that event's finished, you want to process that. In this case, we're not even going to communicate back to our application server until all that processing is done. In a more monolithic type architecture, you would probably be doing those processes on the server cluster, the main server cluster. But because we can handle this quite smartly with a series of functions that execute only what's needed based on the file type uploaded, we can come up with a much smarter solution that's much more cost-effective and also more efficient, basically. You'll see that as we step through it. Okay, so I think we've got 5 parts to this talk, and hopefully I don't run out of time. But the first part is quite basic. I'm going to show you how to init a project in CDK. We're going to create an S3 bucket, apply some permissions and a CORS policy. We're then going to deploy a different S3 bucket, which is going to host React applications. So we're going to turn on web hosting on that bucket. We could have put a CDN in front of it, but anytime you touch CloudFront, it will slow down our deployment. We don't want that because we want to get through this. And then I'm going to show you the link, and you can all upload some files and you can test that it works. So I'm going to switch over and we'll do that. I'm just going to double check the chat to make sure it's all good. Tim says hi here. Hi Tim, how you going? Oh, there's a delay there. That's good. All right, okay. Oh, this is the CDK patterns library that I was talking about. It's on GitHub. Okay. So to init a CDK application, you just have to have the npm module installed globally, and then you can run the binary that comes with that. You can elect to have a sample starter app. I would do that so you have something in there. Once that's run, I'm not going to run that because it runs npm, and if we run npm, it'll be here all night. But basically what that does, this sample app, it's done a few examples where it's created an SQS and a topic and subscribed to that. So we don't need this, we'll move on. That's just for an example. So, okay, so what we're doing now, I've created the two stacks like I described in the outline. So the entry point for CDK is, which is referenced in CDK JSON, which is bintalk.ts. And in here, we're starting a new CDK application, and we're creating two stacks, our app stack and our website stack. So we're going to our app stack. We have created ourselves the S3 bucket, define the cause policy directly in there. Don't do a cause policy like this. I'm just doing it for ease today, but you generally want to lock that down, obviously, to known domains. I'm just putting an expiration on this bucket. Actually, I think I should be just putting this on the uploads key because we're uploading to a particular prefix in S3. So yeah, that life cycle would go on there. And so delete all files that land in the uploads after a day, so we don't have to worry about deleting them in our app or in our state machine. Because I haven't committed that, I'm not going to put that in, but that probably should have been there. Otherwise, all the files in the bucket are going to get life cycled and deleted. This is a CDK attribute, and basically says when you deploy the stack, it will also just deploy the bucket if it's empty. That's the typical. But I believe because this is an enum TypeScript, fantastic. So you can see all your possible values there. Okay, now I'm doing something that you also should never ever do, but just because for this demo I didn't want to have authentication, I didn't want to have the signed URLs and everything, I'm literally opening up this bucket so anyone can upload. So I'm giving permissions for everyone to upload and read the process files. Again, never do that. And this CloudFormation output, these are available in CloudFormation console, but the CDK will also print this out for us. And we want to get this bucket name. We're going to reference this bucket name in our website. We have a React website, and that's going to list out the files in this S3 bucket. So let's deploy this out now. So it's the CDK deploy. And if you run this, it's going to say the two stacks, which one do you want to deploy? So in this case, we want to deploy the website stack. Okay, this is another cool thing that CDK does. Any IAM policy changes, statement changes rather, it will print them all out. This is fantastic. Like I picked up so many times where I've got the permission slightly wrong or just too loose and that type of thing. But it just full feature. Just yes, continue. Okay, so we're literally building up this stack from nothing. It will create all these resources, and it will print us out our bucket name once it's created that. You might be asking about region config. The region is set in this case, in my credentials, so it's AP Southeast 2, but you can pass that in. In fact, there's an environment flag in that when you init the app, I think, or when you init the stack, it can take a third argument, which is props. Environment's one of those props. That can include account ID and region and that type of thing, which is really handy. Okay, so you can see it's basically this Showbit's going to the web console for CloudFormation. This I just prints it out as it comes. No weird like refreshes and things like that. And you can see, oh, I should talk about naming things as well. There is some naming conventions that you should follow. There's a resource I will link at the end called Open CDK. It's a fantastic open source set of tips about CDK, and it's one of the reasons I didn't get into too much detail in CDK, because it's all just there and it's fantastic. So just follow that. It's pretty much the Bible here. I've got it open here while that's running. So I'll put this in the chat while we're waiting. All right, let's go back. The first one is always the longest because it has to provision the most resources, including some CDK metadata resources, including a bucket. I don't quite remember what the metadata bucket stores, but I think it stores information about deployments and that type of thing, like what the current SHA for the current deployment is and what the previous one was. So if you need to roll back and that kind of thing. It's just like a little database basically in S3. Okay, so we've got the URL now, so I should make sure that works. Okay. Website stack. You know what? I made a mistake already. I meant to display the app stack. No problems. This website obviously won't work because it doesn't have the bucket name in it, so that's fine. I'll talk through what the website stack was in a second. We'll switch to that. This one actually should deploy faster because it's just an S3 bucket. I was wondering why that was taking so long. Okay. Policy. Okay, great. We've got the bucket here, so we're going to. There's probably ways you could do this without having to copy it. You could probably reference it or put it in a config file or something. But I'm just going to put it in there. I'm going to check that this is working now. So I go to npm run start. Just run this website locally before I deploy it. Okay, that's working. So I will now build this. I need to make a build version. And then we can deploy this up. If you want to know about this, it's create React app. It has the AWS SDK installed, and I'm using a drop zone for uploading files. Again, because we're doing it in a funny way, we're not using a signed URL. We're literally uploading the file directly to S3 from the browser, which is unauthenticated, which is pretty crazy. You never do that. But you have to make, it's not a regular call, you can do a make unauthenticated request to list the objects. So yeah, that's what it does. And it just refreshes every 5 seconds. So it's a pretty basic little React app. Using TypeScript as well, so hence why we've got these types in here for these. So okay, I'm going to deploy the app again. Sorry, the website stack. Get it right. This is the last time we have to deploy this website stack. It's only the one time, so actually I don't know why this changes there, but I'll continue. They look the same to me, so I'm not quite sure. You might be wondering about CI and CD with CDK. That's a whole other topic. Tim Riley, if you're listening, maybe you can do that one. It's pretty complicated. And I think also Brian has been doing something like that as well. I mean, CI, CD is pretty complicated. Yeah, just a few gotchas. I think it's improving as well. There's actually there's some pattern libraries for it as well. But yeah, for this type of thing, it's for demonstration purposes, it's better to be running these locally so we can see these commands and how they run. Okay, I probably had that URL from before, so I'm going to share it out now because there's a delay on this anyway. So by the time it's deployed, just click it. All right. So you can see here that basically it's shard up the build directory, it's zipped it up and pushed it up, and I'll talk through this now quickly. So we're using this AWS S3 deployment library, which is not a core library, it's one of the pattern ones I was talking about, and simply it allows you to deploy out a directory, in this case, down two directories in the build directory. React destination, this website bucket that we've created up here, which has got public read access. For the website URL, which I'm about to share with you. So I believe it's finished. Yes, it has. Yes. So yes, CDK synth. Yeah, that's a really good point, Brian. Yeah, I'll catch back up on that. Oh, Inception. Okay, don't want to. All right, so let's refresh this. Can someone upload something as well? We'll make sure this is working. Should be getting files up there now. I'll wait until someone uploads a file. Okay, great. That's Tim. That's Joel indeed. Yep. Oh, he's crying. Oh no. Damn you, Tim. Okay. I deserve that. All right. Okay, we're on to step 2. We're on to the next section now. So I think I saw some. We'll skip over that. We'll get questions on the next bits. I'm already running too long. Okay, so in the next part, we're going to create a node function for processing these files initially. They're not actually going to download the file. We're just going to do an S3 head on it, get some information about it, and then we're going to an S3 CP and move it. So it wouldn't matter if it's like a gigabyte. This function's not actually going to download it. You have limited disk space in a Lambda function. So first thing you want to do is get some information about the file, including file size, because if it's too large, you just can't deal with it in Lambda to do these other things that you want to do, but also the file type and that kind of thing. So we just want this initial process Lambda. We're going to create a step function state machine definition that will run this Lambda, and it will look a bit like that. So it's going to run the job. Hey, did the job run? Yes, great. And then we're going to set up CloudTrail events that listen for S3 put objects in the uploads path specifically. So you don't want to because we'll be putting other objects into the bucket in other paths, so we don't want it to like, get stuck in the loop. So just listen to it in a subdirectory, and that will trigger this whole state machine. So uploads trigger the state machine. So let's go. Okay, so that's where. Okay. All right, so. Close web stack because I'm not going to use it. Change that again. Okay, so the app stack has changed. We've got new things. So first we created an IAM policy that simply allows S3 object permission. So this is like read object, put object, just the basic kind of commands in the bucket. It's the same bucket as before, the app bucket, the upload bucket, the bucket. And then we created this Lambda function, and this is using a Lambda node, for lack of a better word. Lambda node, again, is like a new experimental Lambda CDK library that uses Parcel.js, which is a bundling tool. And it's fantastic because Lambda, really the smaller the smaller the package size, I know there's another word, the smaller the deployment size, the faster your Lambda will run. So Parcel's brilliant because it does tree shaking, so it just gets rid of any JS code that you're not using in the execution path. So it works really, really well. Works really well for some things, like not complicated things, anything that needs a binary or something special included, and we'll cover ways that you can handle those later. But anyway, we turn on tracing, which is X-ray, just so you can see the execution of those. And in the actual function, you can add the AWS X-ray library, so you can put in trace points for, like, getting the head of the object, uploading the object. You can get a nice waterfall. And yeah, it's running on the latest runtime. This one, Node 12. So add the policy to the bucket. Now we're going to create the state machine. So we create SFN. So we have to add that to our package, and it's the step functions library. And the step functions library, we can declare our state machine definition. So first thing we do is create a task, or I'm calling them jobs or tasks, and that's the initial processing job, which invokes the function, which is that Lambda function. And the thing about state machines is they have input and output. So we'll get input from the CloudTrail event about the S3 object, and we will actually going to clear all of that out because there's a lot of noise in there I can show you, and we're just going to create a new path that is going to get passed down the tree, and it's this process object. So result path, this function clears that out, and this argument will put the results of that Lambda function in there. So if we look at that Lambda function, it's just a TS file in here, very simple. The one thing I should say about doing it this way is that these will share the same package JSON as your CDK definition, which is a bit weird, but it does also mean that if you're having one library and multiple functions, it just means you can have guaranteed to have that same version in multiple Lambda functions because they don't all have independent package locks. So there is that advantage, but it is weird sometimes to have very specific app libraries in your infrastructure definition JSON file. So pros and cons. So we're looking for the request params that come from CloudTrail in our function, and we just instantly throw if it doesn't have those. So we need those event details in there, and we always will get them from CloudTrail. And here we're just doing the S3 head that I mentioned to get the file size, the content type, the metadata. And down here, I'm just going to have to run through this. Down here, we're just doing an S3 copy object. And at the end, we're just returning all that data. So let's deploy this. I should run that. I have to really run through this. Oh yeah, while that's running, I'm going to talk a bit more about what this function does. So this function really nicely processes the files. So, people's file names are all weird and, maybe encoding weird in the file name and stuff like this. So the first thing we do is we sanitize that file name, but we go one step further. In S3, we're very methodical about how we store things. So we create UUIDs. So it's a UUID for the object, and then maybe have it then a UUID, a version UUID for the actual file, and so we actually rename the file. So it's like UUID-original. Say it's a JPEG, and then when we're doing the copy object, we actually put in a content disposition header with the original file name. So when you go to download it, it'll be nosoup.png, but in S3 it's stored as that, basically. Oh yeah, that's annoying. There's a flag you can pass, so it doesn't ask you that. So yeah. Okay, let me just check on how many things we have. Okay, that's good, because it's good that someone's put a PDF in there, because that's one of the use cases that we're going to go through. So I'm talking ahead a bit, but I'm going to add a step basically want to thumbnail these, and you can't thumbnail a PDF with your traditional like VIPs or image magic libraries. But that still relies on GoScript. So we're going to basically in our state machine, if it's a PDF, we're going to process that. I think we're going to skip this and go straight. Well, skip seeing those results and let's start talking straight away about part 3. Otherwise, going to run out of time. Okay, so in part 3, we don't create a Lambda layer. We reference one that's already existing for GhostScript. You can create your own one. It's just basically creating a zip file. And a Lambda layer is a package of dependencies that your Lambda might have. Because now with Amazon Linux 2, it has very minimal libraries installed, which is a good thing because it runs faster, but it just means that any dependencies that you need, you have to package in there. So yeah, we're going to do that with GhostScript, so we have that. So we're going to create another Lambda function that runs the GhostScript for converting PDFs to PNGs. And then we're going to add this next step, and it's a repeated condition in the state machine definition. So it's like a bit of like a loop, and we'll use that more and more as we go. So let's head over and do that. Oh, still running. Okay, so now we have whole nother function, a GhostScript function here. I'm not going to go through that too much, but basically it's just running our GhostScript and converting PDFs to PNGs. In our app stack, we pretty much did the same thing again as we did in the last one to add another Lambda function. It does complicate up the state machine logic, and I do find that maybe this is one place where YAML could actually be better than TypeScript, because if you ever used step functions before, the YAML format's actually not too bad. The code actually looks uglier than the YAML for once, so just bear that in mind. Having said that, like, you can't make any mistakes in here. If you have any logic mistakes, like you have like an uncompleted path, or you kind of call the wrong, like you call a choice where you should be calling as task, it does give you that error before it even runs in CloudFormation. Like, there must be a linting process, an additional to the typing process, a linting process that happens, which really helps a lot. So let's check on that deployment. So that one's deployed. So I'm just going to quickly see that this is working. Someone's trying to hack it already. No. Let's put some Java. And I'm going to step over to the step functions here. So we should see our state machine here. We should see an execution. No executions. Where's that? Okay. Any executions out? Yeah, there we go. Just took a second. All right, so okay, so I just want to quickly talk about. Remember how I said like CloudTrail gives you a whole bunch of input. It gives you a lot of stuff. We don't end up keeping that because we don't really want any of it. So the output of the initial processing job is just the things we want. And the next step is to thumbnail, which is the bit we've just implemented. No, we haven't, because that was a PNG. So let's upload a PDF, and we can see that. Oh yeah, and you can see processing the files and filing them away very neatly. So that's very enjoyable for people who like things neat. Oh yes, and so I want to show, even if you clicked on this, it will download with the original file name. That is the original file name, believe it or not. But if I do, I should mention here on parallel execution. So I don't know what the limit is, but it's very, very high. So you can process, something could drag on 50 files and process pretty swiftly. So I believe that's Rimmer. So if I download that, yeah, you can see it's Rimmer. So that's in the headers. So that's very nice. All right. So we'll deploy that second bit, which was the deploy it again, which is going to deploy out our GoScript function. It'll expand out to this, and then we can upload some PDFs, and it should create a preview. Let's talk about the next section because I'm going to run out of time otherwise. Okay, okay, part 4. So this one we're going to create another function, but this time we're not going to use that CDK node parcel thing because we have some binaries that need to be packaged up with it, and parcel doesn't always do such a good job of that. And it's going to be the function that makes thumbnails essentially. We'll use libvips and sharp.js, and we'll be adding another step to that next step loop, basically. So the initial processor, if it was just an image, it would say the next step is thumbnails. But if it was a PDF, it will say the next step is a GoScript, and after it's done GoScript, then the next step is the thumbnails. And if it's like not a file that we can process at all here, it just goes straight to success because if it's a Word file. And obviously you can add extra functions to process all these different things. Just bearing in mind limitations of Lambda in terms of memory and also disk storage, and so you might want to run a Fargate task. I did have that in the demo for today, but it just takes too long to provision and even too long to execute unless you have a cluster always running. But you can just run a Fargate task and it takes about 40 seconds to spin up, depending on how much resources you give it, and then it can execute with a lot more power, and it could process huge files. You can transcode video, do whatever you want in that. Okay, so let's just check deployment out. Oh, I did it again. Someone in the chat could put in the flag so it doesn't ask you that. I'll next time, that'd be good. Okay, but I think it's, I can check out the next version now. All right, so I'll show you what we created here. So this time we actually have a folder here for thumbnail. And it's like a whole nother, it's like your typical Lambda function, node Lambda function. It has its own package JSON, it's a config and that type of thing. We do need to get into this one. And we need to zip it up, basically. So we need to install, and then we need to, I did have to run npm. Then we need to make a zip. I can see there's a dist zip there, I must have checked it in, but I'll just show you anyway the steps that would be required. Oh, in terms of testing these functions as well, there's a great library called Lambda Local, and that would just allow you to pass an event to the function and test it. And there's another one that actually runs in Docker, which actually fully emulates the runtime environment. I can't remember. I'm sure Brian's typing that in. That'd be good. So npm run. I've just got a task called zip, and that will build out this this function and create a zip. This function basically does thumbnailing. Oh, didn't need to. Oh, that's right. Okay, so basically it's copying itself to a build directory and doing another install in there. And so it's not, because this whole thing is getting zipped up, the node modules and everything, because it includes some binaries. So basically that's the way we're doing this one. And so, yeah, if we just upload something now, because the previous one's finished, getting a lot of files in there, I'm going to upload a PDF. This cool thing. Let's see what happens. So this should create a dash preview file of that PDF using GoScript. And then when we deploy this next one, that will then also create thumbnails of various different sizes. So there it is there. That was the original PDF, and this is our a PNG of a PDF. Yeah. So let's deploy that out on that. Let's close this one. So. Oh, I didn't get the flag. Okay, grab it now. There you go. Thanks, Tim. Oh, yeah, and thanks, Brian. It's the AWS SAM. Oh, Inception. Better get out of that. It does that, yeah. Okay. Let's run it again. The flag. You shouldn't do this in real life. You should always check these if you're running it from your computer, but that's probably what you need to run when you're doing CI anyway. So. Okay, so after this, we should have thumbnails, so I will move on. Okay, actually at the last one, so I think we did it. So now we're going to add recognition, which is an AWS service. When I did this, it might have changed, but you can't call it directly from a state machine. It can't like a state machine has like invoke function, and it has native SNS, so you can actually take the output of the state machine and put it straight into an SNS topic, which is awesome, which is basically what you should do with this to take it to the next step, to tell your application, hey, a file's been uploaded and it's processing, here's all the information. Use SNS to do that. But recognition doesn't. So we just run a little Lambda job to add that. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. All right, so basically, again, just another job where we've got another Lambda. The interesting thing about this Lambda is, well, not a lot really. It's much the same. Oh, okay. So I didn't go through how the thumbnail one was different. So it's just a regular Lambda function rather than a Lambda Node.js function. So it's the more typical one you'll see in the documentation. It's code.asset. This actually has a bunch of ways of referring to the code. You can actually refer to the code in an S3 bucket already. I think there is a way to actually put inline code in there as well. If you had a really tiny function, you could literally put the code inline, which is not the way I do it, because you can't have tests on it that easily. But yeah, there are a few ways to do it. And memory actually had to run on Node 10 because there must have been, for the libvips that I had, I couldn't get running on Node 12. The running binaries can be a bit of a back and forward. And yeah, I gave that a 2-minute timeout. Because any longer than that to the thumbnail and things are going wrong. So, and recognition is back to using the Lambda node. So just a straight recognition.ts. We're giving it permissions to run recognition. So I put another policy. It's good in your CDK. Well, there's so many ways you can organize it, unlimited ways, but I just like to put all my policies together, all my functions together, that kind of thing. So it's a policy there that allows you to run the recognition service. And then basically that function is very, very simple. It just basically calls the service. So let's have a quick look at that. Takes the inputs. It does two things. It goes detect labels, and then it also does text detection. So that would be good if you had to put that in your search index, so it would help you search for images, which is pretty cool. You can put both labels and text detections in your search, like in your search index. Pretty sweet. So let's check out how we're going. So let's just deploy this one as well. Thank you, Tim. So let's have a look at one of the newer state machine executions. The awesome thing about step functions is just basically the traceability of these executions. Obviously, we haven't had any failures, but the failure stuff is pretty good. I'm catching a lot of exceptions in mine because I want it to get all the way through. I just have a success fail type thing at the end, but you can actually throw exceptions. It really depends on how you want to architect it. I do want it to go through all the steps every time though. So, okay, so let's have a look at the output of this one. It was processed to PNG. So we haven't done any of the ones, more complex ones now. So unless someone's uploading something right now, I'll upload something. I will. Okay, pockets and actually I should have done the PDF. Do a PDF too. So that's probably the PDF. Yeah. Okay, we haven't deployed recognition yet. It's still going. So anyway, this is just one that created thumbnails. And we'd probably be able to see that, I have lots of thumbnails appearing now. So I made it just do a few different formats like WebP, PNG, I think. So yeah, you should be able to see those. And we don't do that attachment file name with those because thumbnails are typically viewed inline. So we just go with that sanitized file name, and that's that. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up because I'm just about up. We'll just see if that final deployment run, we'll just run one with recognition because that's quite fun. Because it is incredible, actually, what it can pick up and recognize. So if anyone's got any photos of like anything, well, not too weird, but photos, upload some photos now, and we'll see what recognition comes up with. It's quite a lot of fun. Cool, I can see some things going in there. So see that happening frighteningly quickly, or it didn't happen. Oh, it did happen. There you go. There's so many more things I could cover with this. I could probably speak all night. But yeah, basically we put the recognition results in the output here. I didn't put it in S3, but the thing I uploaded, it was like post advertisement paper flyer that is just labels, and it just OCR'd all the text in it. So I'm going to just have a look one more thing, see if someone else has uploaded something funny and see what it says. So yeah, it's a JPEG, something like that. Person, human. All right, it's Ben Simmons and Joel Reed again. Thanks, Tim. I don't know what the text. Okay, I bet that is. Okay, I'm going to wrap that up. I'm just going to quickly check if there's any questions. So just hit those up in the chat.
Yeah, we'll give it a minute and see if anyone's got any questions for you before we wrap up there. But just wanted to again say thank you for taking the time to come and present to the group, particularly being an online thing. Yeah, this is a little more challenging than some other formats. So again, very appreciative for the effort you've put in there.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
All right. So we'll leave your inception on the screen there. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully this has been really, really interesting. The chat will be open for a little while. If you've got any other questions you want to put in to ask, we'll answer them, or we'll have a bit of a chat hanging out there. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in. We will do this again next month. If you've got any feedback, please either send a message to me on Meetup, submit it into the Meetup app when it prompts you for your feedback as well. Super interested in knowing what you guys thought of this in terms of a format and how it worked. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next month, and stay safe, everyone.